In part two of our podcast episode with SME CEO Mark Kramer, we hear how Mark led the company through the financial meltdowns of 2008, 2009, and finally through the 2010s when the company started growing beyond the confines of Michigan and picking up steam. Not one to sit on the sidelines, Mark continued to develop himself professionally during this period to keep up with the company's overall growth. Here is part two of the episode with SME CEO Mark Kramer. And I think you guys have done a good job of expanding and not, as they say, there's an expression, not hanging too far out over your skis, if you will. I think you've kind of taken that slow and methodical growth and kind of took advantage of opportunities that presented themselves that made sense, right? And you weren't just trying to grow for the sake of growing.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it, because we have those discussions when we talk about planning and growth. And to me, growth is always an outcome, right? If you do the right things for the right people and you treat your people well, growth should happen, right? Our clients should want more of the services we provide. And that's what's happened over the years, rather than, targeting and say, we want to grow and be, all over the country, or we want to, grow to a certain size. We really try to focus on what are the things that we're doing and what are the things that we can do right that will create our growth. And so, taking care of our people, training and developing them, trying to, help them become leaders, that's what helps the growth. We have a program that we started back in the 2000s called Build a Practice, or we call it BAP here. And it was really, how do we transfer the learnings and knowledge of our younger staff or our senior staff who have learned how to build their own practice and the tricks they used and what they learned. And we've tried to pass that on to our younger staff. And, that early on, it was a struggle. We did it, out of necessity, because we were like, hey, the economy is tough here in Michigan. We got to figure out how to get more projects. And, 10, 15 years later, it's amazing the difference in terms of the program and the reception of it. And, watching some of those people really blossom after that program. And it created a lot of the opportunities and growth. And it really, it's sort of that the message we talked about was, hey, if you learn how to build relationships and solve people's problems, they'll want to come back for more, similar back to like what my dad was doing early on. So we're trying to figure out what's that magic sauce, and teaching, engineers and technical people who don't want to be salespeople, right? That's the last thing they want to do. But how do you teach them how to just do it in a way that's comfortable for them and build those relationships and go out looking for problems to solve? And, if you do that, you can be successful. And we also talk about them controlling their own destiny, and that if they create and build those relationships, then they can do the kind of work they want to do, as opposed to being in a situation where they have to do work that's handed to them, right? It gives them a lot more ownership in the process.
Well, yeah, and I guess I was going to say you could call it the Kenneth Kramer method, right? But I mean, also when you think about it, you guys are really creating fertile ground for intrapreneurs to exist at SME, right? And so a lot of times we talk about people being entrepreneurial, but you're creating an opportunity for individuals within the confines of an organization to have an entrepreneurial mindset and to maybe flex some of the things that they know, and to try some things that, in a lot of environments that you find in design firms, they don't allow that type of flexibility. And it sounds like you allow that at SME and give people a chance to try some new things.
Yeah, I love your word, intrapreneur. I think that's a great thing. And, really trying to encourage and, help people learn how they can have an impact and how they can build those relationships. And we live in an interesting world because we do a lot of smaller projects and we do a small piece on so many projects. And so having those relationships and having that ability to help is important. And it's really hard for one person to run around and get all that work the way we do it. And so we really need everybody finding those opportunities. And when you look at our cost of sales and you look at our close rate on proposals, it's been very effective. Like people are surprised when they hear how well we do with, our proposal, for the last, I don't know how many years, our proposal hit rate is like 80%. And when people hear that, they look at us cross-eyed and it's like, well, we only write proposals that we know that we can win, right? But that's also because our people are able to create enough opportunities that we stay busy, right? So I do agree. And I've had this, and there's stories I tell about people that wanted to get into certain areas of our business that didn't exist at the time and trying to work with them to figure out how to do that. We had one of our young geotechnical engineers back in the day really wanted to get into retaining wall design. I mean, this is like 20 years ago, and it was something he really wanted to do. And I said, okay, let's talk about, well, how do you get there? Well, you got to know and understand how to do it. Then you got to be able to build trust with people. Then you got to go find a bunch of clients that need that service. And so we worked through a plan and said, okay, here's step one, here's step two, here's step three. And, now they're doing all kinds of work that way. I mean, it takes time, but that's how we've grown some of the services. You almost treat it like a mini startup within the company. You find somebody that wants to do something, and if they're really passionate about it and they're willing to put in the energy, they can really make a successful career out of it.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, you're speaking my language. I mean, I think, the mindset that exists at SME that you have kind of shepherded and undertaken from your dad is refreshing, because I think in this space, in the design industry, a lot of people are happy with the status quo. And I would dare say that SME is kind of runs against that from the perspective that you're just not going to let a lot of grass grow under your feet. And as new opportunities present themselves, as you guys continue to expand even and become even more a higher level of expertise within the areas that you serve, I mean, there's always going to be new opportunities that present themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a challenge to manage that, right? Because you need to do a certain amount of sort of the good work that pays the bills to, keep everybody happy and grow and develop. But yeah, we definitely are looking, and we encourage people to go out and, try new things. We just, as consultants and as conservative people, we have to manage that. And so we spend a lot of time talking about risk management and teaching our team about that. But it's fun because we do get to see a lot of projects and a lot of things. I mean, there's so many things we do sometimes that I don't even know if I know like all the different services and areas that we touch, because we have so many people that have decided to become experts in various areas. And it's fun to watch and fun to see when we get to work on some of these projects.
Now, I just want to kind of switch gears just a little bit to talk about just the overall experience of working at SME. And I know we talked a little bit about this, about your employee ownership, about some of the things that you offer to your employees, 100% of medical, there's no copays, you have very low deductibles. I remember you telling me that your benchmark at SME is a little different because you're always trying to return as much money as possible to your employees. Was that a mindset that your dad had, or was that something that evolved over time with you? I mean, yeah, I guess you could make the argument that your dad thought that way because, I mean, heck, he took the company over because he didn't want people being, shafted with regard to bonuses. But how did that piece of it develop, and how do you view ownership there nowadays in 2021 at SME?
Interesting. That's a great question. Yeah, it didn't come from me. This is my dad felt this way back then. That's, again, the title benevolent dictator, right? He was, even though he's tough on people and everything else, he was very, very benevolent. It's interesting when you talk about it. A lot of our team members may or may not recognize it because it's hard unless you really dig deep into the numbers and sort of understand the differences between, company A and company B. But, he truly felt that way. He would do whatever he could to take care of the people. One of his drivers, though, was he hated paying taxes, interestingly enough. And so him and his CFO at the time were always looking for the most effective way to get as much money into the hands of the team as possible. And so when you look at, any business, right, the money comes from your clients. You have to earn that in your projects and your fee. And then you want to make sure that you take care of the team members and all your subcontractors and vendors and everybody else that interacts with you. And then hopefully there's enough profit left for the company to invest back in the company and that kind of stuff. And my dad always leaned on the side of making sure the team was well taken care of in so many ways. And again, a lot of people may argue, but when you look at the benchmarks and you look at all the things that I've looked at over the years and working for a couple of our, competitors or would have been considered competitors out in the industry, I sort of saw the other side. And there are a lot of things in our system that he created that are very beneficial to our staff. And sometimes we take it for granted because it's been here for so long. I mean, the medical plan is a great example of something that they created long ago, and we've just continued to manage. And some of it is driven by the Michigan, Detroit kind of market requirement for health insurance. Back in the day, it was, to get staff, you had to compete with the big three in terms of benefits and that kind of thing. That's gone away in the last 10 years. But, we've maintained it because we see, it costs the company some money, but the company is the employees here. We're employee owned, and that, I'm still a majority owner, but we have 100 plus other shareholders. So I look at it, like I have one big partner that I have to take care of. And I've taken the same philosophy as my father because I'm included in that group, right? So whatever we can do to make sure that we do as well for our clients as possible and make as much money as we can, and then spend it wisely, and as much as we can, give it back to the team. And I'm the same way. It's like minimize the taxes. I'd rather give money to our team than give it to Uncle Sam. And, we still pay a lot of taxes, right? Both at the corporate level and the individual level, but trying to be as efficient with that as possible. So, healthcare is one example where we can buy that at the corporate level and use pre-tax dollars to pay for that. Because, I've had this, our benefit manager comes and said, hey, we can save some money. We'll just start charging the employees for copay, or not copays, but, a monthly fee or whatever. Like all your competitors, we can cut your costs down. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. But all you're doing is taking money out of the corporation, and then instead you're taking it from the staff. And don't you think that if the team has to pay more, that they're going to come back and ask for raises? And that, we're just going to, be moving dollars from one pocket to another. And they look at me cross-eyed, and I'm like, as long as it's still affordable and it doesn't impact our competitiveness, we should continue to pay for it this way because it's the most effective way to pay for it on behalf of our team. And we every couple of years, we go back and we look at the math on the different ways to approach it. And we find that our self-insured program usually saves us 20 to 30% over a fully paid premium plan like a Blue Cross, but we get just as good coverage. And then, in good years, we benefit. In bad years, it costs us a little bit more. But at the end of the day, our team is always ahead because, they're responsible for a deductible, but they don't have to, write it or take a payroll deduction every month. And we pay, we've gone out and looked at other companies through acquisition and stuff, and we see how much they pay as a percentage of their revenue. And we pay more than normal. So our profitability is down slightly, but I try to manage the profitability of the company and how successful the team is at the end of the year together, right? Because they're not mutually separate. They're really overlapping. And it's been pretty successful. There's other programs, our profit sharing program or the 401k match. Some of the other things we do are really set up. And again, most of these were set up by my father and his team. Again, how do we take money responsibly and pass it along to the staff, minimizing the taxes, maximizing cash flow? So we look at when we do things and that. And again, it's not always seen and felt by the team, but the people that have been around long enough and that we've shared a lot of this information with, they get it and they understand it over time that we're really trying to make sure that we take care of the team that way as best we can.
Yeah. No, I mean, I applaud you guys for taking that approach. And I think, outside of finances, healthcare is like one of the biggest concerns or worries that the average American has. So if you can take that onus off of your employees by, kind of doing what you need to do in that area, I think it can ultimately pay off dividends, especially from a recruitment and a retention standpoint. So I want to encourage you to continue in that vein, because we see too many firms that like to cut corners when sometimes even when the going gets tough. And that's the last area that I think you should cut corners, is especially as in benefits for your employees, because they're the ones that feel it. They feel it right away. And so I certainly want to encourage you to continue doing what you're doing, because it's obviously working. I want to end with this, because we talked about this a little bit in our last conversation. I asked you, because you're not into growth for growth's sake, but you said that growth should come from the demand from our clients. And because I had asked you at the time, where do you see SME in the next 5 or 10 years, and how large of a firm can you be? And that was your response to me. How do you feel about growth, the growth of SME and the trajectory that you feel like your firm is going to experience in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, just as a, benchmark looking back to 2014, 2015, we've had pretty steady growth, 10, 15%, and sometimes even more than that over the last 5, 6 years. I mean, COVID hit us last year, but we're back growing again, and we'll probably be up, 10% this year. And so I think in 2019, we grew almost 25%, right? So we stretched ourselves a lot, and then we, shrunk back a little bit in 2020. But I think looking out at the world and understanding the demands with the infrastructure spending that's coming and the way the economy is going and all the money that's been put into the system and that, provided we don't have another black swan event, I don't see why we can't continue to grow at that 10, 15% rate pretty steadily. And there may be years that we grow a little more. There may be years we grow a little bit less. But, if you take that trajectory, right, that's, you're going to double in, 5, 6 years. And so, of course, as you get bigger, growing at that rate is harder and harder. But you also have the people and the infrastructure to do it. So I think we'll continue on that pace, provided, we don't run into a brick wall with something. But, if we're not, then we got to self-reflect on, are we doing the right things? And are we, do we have the right strategy? Do we have the right people? Because I look out 20 and 30 years and say we're in a area, in a industry that just is going to have so much demand on our needs. And we have a shrinking supply of people able to deliver. So, from that standpoint, there should always be the opportunity to grow if you're doing the right things with the right people.
Yeah. And I know the last time we spoke, you also brought up the fact that you felt like that the pandemic actually brought about some unique opportunities, specifically the fact that you said your CFO had a chance to improve all of their processes, that you guys were building out your university in terms of training your employees in a lot of different areas, including your leadership training. Is there anything else that the pandemic has done for SME that maybe wouldn't be as obvious to the average person looking at the company?
Interesting. Yeah, I think there's a few things that we learned and experienced during that time. And we just finished 2 or 3 days of business planning last week. We had a couple days with the group leaders and regional office managers doing business planning. And then we had a strategic planning event on the last day, doing our annual reset for our plan. And I think what I saw was, one, we got much more disciplined on our regular communication with the team, instituting town halls. We have a weekly huddle with the leadership team talking about, and it's amazing. We do this meeting in 10, 15 minutes, and we cover a lot of ground. Things that we thought about doing before that, the pandemic sort of forced us to, but during that time we got really good at it. And so I think we've really improved our communication out to the team and the speed at which we do it, and also how well we do it. We also, I think, developed a great approach to sort of what I'll call crisis management, change, things happening every day. If you remember back early on in the pandemic, it seemed like every other day something was coming. We had the government coming in, our governor here coming and saying, hey, we're going to shut down construction. And we're like, what do you do? And then the next day, something else, and the next day, and then a client would come. And so at the time it seemed like overwhelming, but through that process, we learned how to like get a team together, like have a plan, meet every day or every 3 days or every 5 or whatever you needed to do, attack the problem, and then get that communication back out. So we really learned how to deal with that. And I thought that was great. We also saw, I think we learned a lot about ourselves. We saw a number of our clients and competitors and people around us really struggle. A lot of people brought in personal feedback on, people sharing with them the trials and tribulations they were having with at their companies. And we, that I think made our team feel good that we were handling it well. And so it really, I guess it showed that we were able to get through something very difficult and handle it fairly well. And I almost likened it, and I've shared this story with a lot of the team, because they asked me, and I've had some competitors and friends, say, how come you were calm through this whole thing? Right. And I always reflect back and say, well, my experience from my first 10 years when I was dealing with all this stuff gave me a different perspective on how wound up I should get about something and what's important and how we should handle it. And so, I think it really helped to, I hate to ever go through that experience again, but sometimes difficult periods really bring out the character in people and really show you the value and the importance of the team and the people. And I think that's something that happened during this period. We had our tough times and we had our challenges, but I think getting through it and getting through how we got through it, the team really grew together and experienced a lot. So I hate, don't ever quote me. I don't ever want to go through that again, but it was really a good bonding experience and a good team building experience to go through now that we're almost through it, I think. And we did, as you shared, we took the opportunity to really work on and improving a lot of things, figuring out, how to do the daily check-ins and do it with technology, and how to deal with people coming into the office. And a lot of different people helped and came in and figured out how to solve all these problems that were hitting us on a regular basis. And it was great to see. Yeah.
Well, no, I certainly applaud what you guys were able to do and accomplish. And it wasn't easy, but you kind of stuck to the playbook and, for better or for worse, you guys have worked it out and in the process developed some new opportunities, both for the leadership and for the overall employees at SME that I think are going to benefit you guys for years to come. This is how I'm going to close this out, Mark, because you've been kind enough to give me almost an hour of your time. I want you to think of 3 words that you would describe both for your employees. Give me 1 word for your employees, 1 word for your clients, and 1 word for that young engineer that's thinking about coming and joining SME. And I know that's a little difficult, but what would be 1 word, overarching word that when you think of your employees, what's the 1 word that you think about?
The first word that comes to my mind is opportunity.
Okay. All right. Opportunity. What about for your clients?
Partners.
Okay. That's cool. I love that.
How to be a good partner. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, you got to saddle up to your client, make sure they feel like you're going to be along with them for the ride and not just for a portion of it until that check clears.
Yeah, I want them to treat me like a partner and have high expectations, and we should do the same, right?
Absolutely. I love that. So opportunity, partner, and then finally for that young engineer looking at considering just about to get out of school, maybe they went to University of Detroit or U of M, or you picked your favorite school of choice. They're thinking about coming to SME. What's 1 word that you would give them to think about if they were going to consider joining your firm?
Make it tough with 1 word, right?
It is.
So I'm going to say confidence.
Okay.
And what I mean by that, and something that I've learned that, most of the engineers that I meet, the young ones, have all the abilities, right? They're really intelligent. They have it all there. They have it all in them. And really, they just need somebody to help free up or see that confidence that they should have. We have a lot of discussions with engineers about, how we should be leading things. And part of the reason we don't is because we're all fairly introverted. And I feel like in general, we have less confidence than others. Some people have way too much confidence, right?
Yeah.
And I think we would all be better off if our engineers had more confidence. And to me, that's what I see here when I see people come as co-ops and then staff engineers. You just see their confidence growing in themselves. And the ones that really do well are the ones that, not from a, they're all humble here, but it's having that self-confidence that you can stand and have a discussion with a person who's a developer who's, probably net worth is, $20-50 million. And like, you're a young engineer. And that's what I saw with my dad. My dad really had the confidence to sit there and stand and help. And he was a partner, right, with a lot of his clients. And I think in terms of our people and what we can provide is help develop them, educate them, but give them that confidence that they can do these things and that they can do well in whatever it is they're trying to do.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think you chose 3 great words: opportunity, partner, and confidence for the people that currently work at SME, for your clients that you work with, and then for those that may consider coming to work at SME. And honestly, just with all I know about you and your dad and the history of SME, and just in my more than 20 years of experience in the design industry, I got to say, you guys are doing a lot of things the right way. And so I want to encourage you to continue doing what you're doing. And I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to tell this story. Some of it was personal, but all of it was encouraging. So thank you so much, Mark, for taking the time to share a little bit of SME's history with us today on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. I really appreciate you leading me through that. You did a great job. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Absolutely. Thanks for listening to the Build and Revitalize podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the Build and Revitalize podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting platform of choice, so you don't miss out on any of our future episodes. Don't forget to visit sme-usa.com and click on the Resources tab to listen to other episodes of the podcast and access our show notes. You can also connect with SME USA on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. See you next time.